The Philadelphia 76ers, a big road trip coming up. And where are our thoughts on where they can be? I'm going to go right off the bat. The Philadelphia 76ers, it's the Magic, it's the Heat against the Grizzlies. They're going to be in the win column. 2-1, I'm predicting right now. Let's break it all down in just a moment.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? It's Kayla Santiago alongside Keith Pompey with you each and every day here. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $100 and $150 in bonus bets if you win the first $5 bet. Make sure you visit FanDuel.com to get started. So the road trip is coming up, and we are going to break it all down. They're going to be in the Sunshine State in Orlando. Then they take on the Heat, and then the Grizzlies to follow. No back-to-backs. I'm going to go right off the bat. They're going 2-1. I have them winning against the Magic, losing against the Heat, and winning against the Grizzlies. Now, this is with Joel Embiid and Paul George because there aren't any back-to-backs. I'm more confident going into this road trip right now. Keith, 2-1 is where I'm standing, and I think it's going to start out with a win against the Magic.
Yeah, I respect your optimism on them, but I haven't seen anything that told me that they're going to go 2-1. Right now, all I know is Joel Embiid looked horrible the one game that he played in. Paul George, he had his best game of the season playing with Joel, but as good as the Knicks looked that night against the 76ers, they didn't look very well the following night, right? So, I don't know. I'm not as I don't know. I'm not as optimistic for the Sixers on this trip, and here's my reason: the Sixers have a lot of how should I say? They have a lot of questions that still have to be answered. One, when we talk about Joel Embiid, and I guess the Memphis Grizzlies are the last team that they're going to play. But when you go up against Memphis, Zach Edey is 7'4". They come off the bench with a 7'1" backup center. The small forward on the Memphis Grizzlies is 6'11". The power forward is 6'11". That's a lot of length. Also, even still, when we look at it, you have to say Ja Morant is an elusive guy. He was torching the Sixers, playing with them a little bit without Tyrese Maxey. So I believe that that's going to be a tough one. Orlando, Orlando is one of the things, is a young team, a hungry team. I know they're without, their top player who's hurt and injured, but I'm looking at the 76ers and I haven't seen anything that's telling me right now, besides the contract that Joel and Paul George is making, that's telling me that these two guys or this team could go down there and get a victory. And then Miami, you know what? I know they're going through stuff. Jimmy hasn't really looked as good as he has in the past. But they do have Bam. So to me, I think more so than them going down there winning and trying to get losses, this trip right now is all about, to me personally, this team trying to develop his identity, trying to get Joel Embiid and Paul George acclimated with each other and players around them acclimated. But, I haven't seen anything out of this team to tell me that they would go down there and go 2-1. And the one thing I'm going to tell you that I'm scared about the most is that I think the Sixers are going to be in Miami too long. Like, they play a game in Orlando. They're going to fly to Miami. They're going to be down there for a couple of days. And sometimes teams get that South Beach flu. So to me, a lot of things just isn't set up for them to go, 2-1 on this trip. To me, I haven't seen it on the floor either that suggests that they would do that. I respect your optimism though, but I don't see it.
I will say the odds are not in their favor. That's for sure looking at this team. But I think the only edge they have against the Grizzlies, now they got wiped last time against them when they played them, but The only thing that they have against the Grizzlies that they don't have against the Magic or the Heat is they've seen this team already. Joel Embiid is supposed to play in the next 7 games because there aren't any back-to-backs until December. So when you look at it, to me, maybe they have a little bit of an edge from that circumstance. The Grizzlies haven't seen Joel Embiid yet on the floor with them as this team as a whole. And if I'm looking at the end of this road trip, I say, okay, well, that means Joel should have his best game, quote unquote, or be in his best shape throughout early on in the season if his conditioning goes up game after game. My issue with the Magic is that we've seen it already this season. When there's young, scrappy guards that can run around them on the court, the 76ers have trouble. You see so many players on this team, especially the veterans. You look at Kyle Lowry, and he's done some good things for this team, but he also hasn't been the guy that can get up and down the floor super quickly. Gershon Yabusele, another player that we've seen a lot of great things from him so far, but this is not a game where he's going to shine just because of the pace of the game that you might see. Joel's kind of the same. He doesn't love to run up and down the floor either. I think they lose against the Heat. I think Bam and Jimmy are going to be too much for the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm going to be the optimist and say that they are going to steal one against the Magic and the Grizzlies, and then we'll see what happens after that. So I think the biggest thing coming into this is, you mentioned there's a lot of categories where they need a lot of help. There's a lot of holes on this team overall when you look at it. The three-point shooting has not been good. Jared McCain really has been the saving grace of this team. There's been more negatives than positives at this point of the season. The big positive is that it's early on in the season and there is still time to develop. But Joel Embiid, he didn't look great at all. He pretty much looked horrible in that game against the Knicks. So he has some making up to do. We touched on a little bit of Jared McCain possibly being in that starting lineup, what Nick Nurse will do. I'm going to go ahead and say it and jump to Jared McCain real quick. I think Nick Nurse is going to put him in the starting lineup in this game against Orlando Magic. And I say that to your point that you just mentioned a moment ago of the Magic is a young and scrappy team. Kyle Lowry isn't going to be the guy that gets the most minutes against a team like that. Jared McCain can keep up with those guys. So maybe, Keith, we see McCain here in the starting lineup. I would love to see it. I know a lot of people say that he deserves it. It's not going to happen the rest of the season because you need that spark plug off the bench. But I think this is a situation where you can have him in that starting lineup against a Magic team with Joel and Paul George.
Yeah, the only problem, right, with this whole thing is when we look at this, we look at it. You have Jalen Suggs, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Both of these guys they're the starting guards. They're both 6'5", right? Then the guy, Tristan Da Silva, a guy who I felt like the Sixers, who would have been a good fit for the Sixers. He was played at Colorado last year. He's the small forward, starting small forward at 6'8". Then they have Franz Wagner, 6'10", power forward with like point guard skills. And then they got Baptiste, a 6'11", 235-pound center. And the thing is, we're talking about a team that has players injured. But to me, I think that, this could be a good game from McCain at the start. It could be. The only question that I would have is right now, the one thing we talked about before is who's going to provide the scoring off the bench.
Right.
Who are you going to have? And then the thing about it is as good as he is, Jalen Suggs and Caldwell Pope are two pretty good defenders, right? Yeah. And so I feel like they're long, athletic guys. So yeah, he can go there, but I feel like you're going to have to rely heavily on hoping and praying that Joel Embiid turns it around. The one thing that I think that we're both overlooking is we're thinking about Orlando, and we're looking at him and saying, okay, this is the same old Magic. And I will say this team has been extremely streaky. They started out 2-0, then they go to Memphis and they lose to Memphis by 13 points. Then they come back and they beat the Pacers by 4. And then after that, they go on a 5-game losing streak. It was a 5-game road trip at Cleveland, Chicago, Cleveland, Dallas, OKC, and Indiana. And then they come right back home and they have a 5-game homestand that they completed 4, and they won all 4 games. So they have a 4-game winning streak against. Now these teams aren't exactly world beaters, but they beat the brakes off of New Orleans. They annihilated the Washington Wizards. They boat raced the Charlotte Hornets, the Indiana Pacers, and now they're about to play the Sixers. So, you know, this is a team that we also are trying to figure out who they are. But the thing is, they seem like they're bringing stuff together a little bit. But my only concern is just that they just have a long athletic front court, and they also have a long athletic starting lineup, and we even know that Baptiste is essentially like a backup type guy when you think of all these guys that they have. So yeah, I like what they have. I just don't know. I mean, starting Jared McCain will be great, but I think that he might be better suited for coming off the bench. You know what I mean? Like, this and that. I mean, I like him, but I just think that Jalen Suggs and Caldwell Pope will try to lock him down, and they may be able to.
I think McCain might have another big game. And I say that because when you look at the situation, defensively has always been our worry. And we've been out front of saying defensively, Jared McCain, he's undersized. We've seen it already this season, him in situations on the defensive side of the ball. But if Joel Embiid cannot get it going again, and I'm not even talking about Joel Embiid needs to have 35 points in this game, but he needs to look better than he did against the Knicks. But if he can't get it going, he can at least kick it out to Jared McCain, make the defense kind of collapse in on him. Because even though Joel played rough against the New York Knicks, the Orlando Magic are still going to double team him. They know what Joel Embiid can do. They've seen it season after season, how dominating he can be. Yes, he's not the same guy maybe he was at his peak last season. He has a lot to kind of go through conditioning-wise throughout the season to get more games. But hey, maybe Jared McCain can be the spark plug in that starting lineup. I'm going to say Nick Nurse is going to start him tonight here. So we'll wait and see. I don't think that'll happen the rest of the road trip. And I'll touch on that in a moment coming up. But McCain, he's been playing well and he deserves it. But we did talk about the other night that where's the spark coming off the bench? And that is the biggest worry when you put McCain in that starting lineup. That it is. So we're going to touch on a little bit more of what's going to happen on this road trip. Next game coming up, they are going to stay in Florida, but they're going to go to Miami. I don't have the 76ers winning this game. I think even though we've alluded to Jimmy Butler not playing at the top tier, it's Jimmy Butler and Bam and Joel Embiid that's not 100%. I'm going Miami Heat in that game. We're going to break it down just a little bit more, though, in just a moment. And with Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth and any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms do apply. For product specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Down in Miami, where we're going to see Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and Joel Embiid and Paul George. This is the game where I'm not looking forward to seeing the Philadelphia 76ers. So when you look at this contest right now, I don't think there's any way that Philadelphia keeps up with Miami. Now, one thing I am looking forward to is back and forth with Jimmy and PG. That's something we haven't been able to see with PG in a Sixers uniform yet, but Miami also, something to look at for them is they are coming off kind of a tough back-to-back there in terms of games, not necessarily back-to-back days, but tonight they're playing the Pacers, and then right on Sunday they have the Pacers again. Both of those games are on the road, so might be a little bit tough for the Miami Heat then to go back on Monday and play the Philadelphia 76ers, but Bam, to me, is too athletic and going to be too much for Joel Embiid at this stage where he's at right now. Because even if Joel has a good game against the Orlando Magic, Bam is much more forceful down low, is going to do a lot of different things. We saw it with Cat with the next game. He went right at Joel. He was lighting it up early on. I expect Bam to do the same.
Yeah, Bam could have a good one. But here's the thing. This is where me and you, like, I think that this could be one that the Sixers win. And the
Ooh,
reason,
okay.
yeah, I do, of all of them, because, Jimmy Butler has been out, right?
Yeah.
I believe that he missed, he missed what, like 4 games in a
Hmm.
row with a sprained right ankle.
Yeah.
Um, so he hasn't been playing. And so when you look at their roster, like the roster that they've been throwing, the starting lineup that they've been throwing out there the last couple of games, and on top of that, let's just say, they lost 4 of their last 5 games. Their only victory that they had was at Minnesota, where they won 95 to 94. Um, they lost to Detroit in overtime, 123 to 121. That's what they're coming off of, right?
The
So
technical, yeah.
yeah, so
The
the
full
technical,
shut timeout.
yeah, and then also they have before they play the Sixers, they have a 2-game homestand against no 2-game road stand 2-game road series against Indiana. So
Right.
what's going to happen is they play Indiana on Friday night. They're going to play Indiana on Sunday night at Indiana. They're going to have to hop on a plane and they're going to fly down to Miami to play the Sixers, right? So with that being said, is they're not only banged up, the Sixers are in their hometown waiting for them, like relaxing and chilling. This team is going to show up and then they're going to have to throw something together. But right about now, when we look at their starting lineup, right, you have Terry Rozier, who I like a lot. They have Tyler Hero, who's pretty good. We talked about Bam. Bam's averaging 15.3, 9.1 rebounds, 3.9 assists, right? But then you have Kevin Love. And I have the utmost respect for Kevin Love. I just think he's getting a little old in the tooth, right? And then you have Hayward Highsmith, a former blue coat for the 76ers. So when I break these 2 games down, when I break this one down, I think that this is the one that the 76ers can get, assuming if Jimmy Butler doesn't play. Now he missed a bunch of games in a row. I believe he missed 4 already. So um I just feel as if that when I look at this starting lineup, um, I like what Rozier does. Tyler Hero is a great shooter, but the rest and the Bam is good. But I think that forward position is really going to kill them. And this is a team that's been struggling. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, they lost what 4 out of the last 5 games, like I said. So I feel like the 76ers can get them, especially based off the schedule that they have.
Yeah, so Jimmy Butler, from what we're looking at here too, the last game that he played that he wasn't 100% clearly, 7 minutes that he only played against the Nuggets with 2 points on that as well. And then the last really full game he played was in that Suns game and had 15 points. But he's been banged up. And the one thing you look at too is, so you allude to those games on the road against the Pacers. And then it's essentially that back to back there where they do come back home in Miami, but that's Sunday, Monday. So I'm sure that Spoelstra and company and that medical staff over there in Miami is saying, well, you're either playing in the Pacers game or you're playing in the game against the Philadelphia 76ers, because if he is banged up, he's definitely not going to be playing a back-to-back. And if he does play those 2 Pacers games, he probably is not going to play against Philadelphia. Now, I want to see Jimmy play against the 76ers. It's always one of my favorite matchups ever since he was on this team and then ended up leaving. But I don't know. I think my biggest concern is Joel Embiid and Bam, and that's the matchup that I'm looking at. Now, if Jimmy doesn't play, clearly they have a better shot. That is obvious from that standpoint, that Paul George, even Jared McCain out there, guys like Kyle Lowry, Caleb Martin, Kelly Oubre, they're going to be able to go to work without Jimmy Butler. My biggest concern down low in that matchup is I think that's the best center that Joel Embiid will go up against in this road trip. And that can cause some struggles, have we seen. Maybe he'll surprise us and he'll say, you know what? I was just trolling in that next game. I'm going to come out on this road trip and be back to my old self. Who knows? It's Joel Embiid at this point, but he doesn't look too great. And I think going up against Bam is not going to be any fun for us over here.
Yeah, and the thing about Joel, when we talk about Bam, he's going up against Bam 13 times in his career. And Joel has averaged 23.5 points, 10.5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists against Bam. So, he has the numbers. The only thing that a little leery that makes you a little concerned about it this time is, right now, Joel Embiid is coming off of a game where he had very little mobility. Now he's saying it was rust. He's saying he was a little cautious. He was nervous. He was fearful. He was going to mess his knee up. But the thing is, I think that if he doesn't show that he can get back to being the same old Joel he was, he could have a hard time against Bam. Just because if I'm the Miami Heat, my game plan is like, Kevin, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to suck wind today because we're going to run this thing up and down the court and to enable Bam to have an advantage over Joel. Like, we're not going to make it a slow game to where, Joel is just going to be able to lean on him or post him up. We're going to go north and south and make them tired, right? So to me, like, in order for them, if they do win that game, which, and which they have a great chance to, I think that the guy who's going to have to be the hero is going to have to be Paul George. I mean, he is like, you're going to have like a guy like Hayward Highsmith guarding you. You may have Kevin Love guarding you, and it's up to Paul George to show why he's a max player for them to get that victory.
Maybe for once this season, we can sit back and smile and say, oh, they finally have no guys that can defend the Philadelphia 76ers if Jimmy Butler doesn't play. So we'll wait and see. If Jimmy Buckets does play, I'm taking a loss for Philadelphia 76ers. Keith, you're in thought that they can pull out a win in this game on the road trip. Well, there is one more game on the road trip before the Philadelphia 76ers head home. So we will discuss that in just a moment. It's Zach Edey and company, who we've already seen this season, coming up. And hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return to FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Make sure you visit FanDuel.com today. So I was just alluding to it a moment ago. It's the Indiana Pacers and the Miami Heat. That game is tonight, and the Pacers are looking to be -4 favorites right now. So we'll see if Jimmy Butler is a go-ahead or not. Either way, the Pacers looking favored in that matchup. And then another game against one of the most red-hot teams right now in the NBA and in the Eastern Conference. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers in their game coming up, -10.5 favorites over the Chicago Bulls. That's a game you're definitely going to want to look to go over to FanDuel and place your bets and player bets as well, along with parlays. That is something that you are going to want to touch on because the Cavs, they've been letting it up. FanDuel knows it. You all know it. So make sure you go place your bets today. There's no better place to go than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So make sure you go check it out. So 76ers have advantage to me in this game coming up against the Grizzlies. And I know we definitely differ on this opinion here. So we'll go back and forth. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Now, the Grizzlies wiped the Sixers last time out. There's no denying that. And it does look like Joel Embiid is going to play in every single game. He should. There's no back-to-backs until December. It's going to be tough. The length for the Grizzlies is better than the Sixers in terms of any type of depth that they have. Joel Embiid, to me, though, in this Grizzlies game, what I want to see is his best conditioning out of this game stretch. And I think that can help them go to a victory. The other thing is that Memphis did not get to see Joel Embiid on the floor the last time they played them. Now, I know they know his playing style. They know what he's going to do. They know how he can dominate. So they're going to have a game plan in place. This is the NBA. They've seen him before. We know that. But I think the 76ers, they have a good chance. I think Joel Embiid, not saying he's going to be at his best, but I do think that he's going to be at his best in that road trip in this game. And I think he's going to want to say, well, there was a lot of people saying that they were worried about Edey coming out of the draft because of his defense. Joel wants to show people why they were worried about his defense down low on the block. So I'm going to go the Philadelphia 76ers getting a victory over the Memphis Grizzlies. It's going to be grueling. It's going to be tough. But if you got Paul George and Joel Embiid, this is the time for them to start beating teams that people think they cannot beat, because this is the duo, in addition to Tyrese Maxey, that you are going to see coming up for the rest of the season.
Yeah, you know what? I think the big key for this one is going to be what's up with Ja Morant. You know, Ja Morant is, you know, he's right now he's injured. He has a hip, kind of like a pelvic muscle strain. He has a hip injury, right hip injury, and a pelvic muscle strain. So what they're doing is they're taking him basically week by week. And, you know, that's going to be next week. So we'll see. You know, I think they lose a lot with him. Now, the one thing that may be able to benefit them is also that this is a Memphis Grizzlies team that has been dealing with a lot of injuries, right? I'm talking about a lot of injuries. I mean, so when you put that into the equation, is also the one thing. Like, I do think Memphis has a better team, right? When they played the Sixers last time, they were without two key starters, and they were able to run them out the gym. So the thing is, we have to see who's going to be able to come. But at that time, today, that game is probably like 6 days away from now. So anything could change. But my just question is just kind of like, if you have Ja Morant out there without a Tyrese Maxey, if he's able to, I think they're going to lose a lot, right? I honestly do. I also look at their length. I look at how big they are. You know, we're talking about, you know, we talked before, you got a 6'11" small forward. You got a 6'11" power forward. Zach Edey, 7'4". You got the other guy coming off the bench at 7'1", and then what they do is they shoot the ball extremely well, you know, down there. So it's also, believe it or not, is a pretty good place to go for an NBA game. The people in there, they get really excited and everything like that. So I just need to see it. Like, if Joel Embiid comes out, and if he's the Joel Embiid that, you know, we're used to seeing, I'll say, okay, they have a chance. But if he continues to be this Joel Embiid that, you know, is a step too slow, his shot isn't falling, you know, all this other things, then I think that Memphis can get him. But again, it depends on Joel, and it also depends on Ja Morant, and, you know, it also depends on, you know, which team is going to be the healthiest at the time. I don't expect Tyrese Maxey to play in that game. I don't expect him to be back at that time. I think more or less when they get back next Friday and they play a game next Friday at home, that's when I think that Tyrese Maxey is going to come back. That's when I expect them to come back. But so I feel like they're going to lose the firepower that he brings. But you know what? That's why they play the games, right? We see what can happen.
That is why it's the NBA. It's the game of basketball. Let me throw this out there too, though. The Grizzlies in 2 games play the Nuggets. So they play the Nuggets Sunday, November 17th, and they play them again Tuesday, November 19th. And then the day after, they play the Philadelphia 76ers. So Edey is going to have a really, really tough time. All of these being home games. They play the Nuggets twice and then the Philadelphia 76ers. Edey's got his work cut out for him. This is where we're going to see the headlines. Is Edey going to be the defender that everybody wants him to be? Is he going to show up? You're going against Jokic and Joel Embiid, the 2 best centers in the entire league. So he's going to have his work cut out for him. I think that he is going to be tired on a back-to-back after facing Jokic. I'm taking the 76ers over the Memphis Grizzlies in that game. I'm going 2-1 on this road trip. Keith, before we send things off, your keys to the road trip. We've touched on shooting throughout this week as well from beyond the arc. We touched on where that point guard play is going to come from, especially in that Grizzlies game. But some keys for you coming out of this road trip.
I mean, at this point, I just feel like the 76ers have to get a little healthy. I mean, they have to show me something. I mean, I'm not really – we keep talking about keys and everything, and it's great. But, I mean, I think they need more out of a point guard play. But I just don't – I don't see a consistent team. Like, I don't see anything that – aside from the salaries that they make, I don't see a team that's ready to win a championship. I just don't. I mean, so the key is going to have to be Joel Embiid, which Joel Embiid is going to show up. I mean, and to me, that's the biggest thing. I think that they'll basically need more out of the point guard, backup point guard play. Jared McCain is good, but now Jared McCain, this is the tough stretch for Jared McCain.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm saying that is because a couple of days ago, nobody was game planning for him. He was just coming out there doing what he's doing. Now he's going to realize that he's a top of everybody's scouting report. So shots are going to be tougher to come by, right? They're going to focus on him a lot. And so this is a big step for him to show what he can do. But, aside from that, I really just don't know what type of Sixers team that they have. And Jeff Doughton is going to have to step up. The first game he played, he had 11 points. But then after that, he was struggling to make shots the last two games. So to me, that would be key for the 76ers. But the one thing I will tell you, when we talk about back-to-backs with Zach Edey, just remember they had a grueling back-to-back before they played the 76ers. And then they had a day off, and then they played the Sixers. And, people were saying, man, I wish the Sixers would have drafted Edey by the end of the night. So, it's just one of those things where he's still a young guy. It's early. I don't think that's going to impact him as much as it would if he was like Joel Embiid or somebody older.
Let's hope that Joel Embiid can make it impact him, because I am in agreement with you on this one. The key to this road trip for me is Joel Embiid. Who is Joel Embiid going to be? Is he timid? Is he scared of the injury? Is that mental game going to be able to kind of come around a bit and say, all right, I'm a little bit nervous about this knee, but I'm going to go out there and dominate. So Joel Embiid is the key for me on this road trip. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. For Keith Pompey, I am Kayla Santiago saying so long here, and we will see you all next time.